Welcome to the future. It's 2000 AD's war-ravaged world. The scars of nuclear destruction have reshaped society. Here, justice isn't blind anymore. It's radioactive. This is where we first meet Johnny Alpha, a mutant bounty hunter and member of the Strontium Dogs, although not the name they prefer. Johnny is the perfect hero. He has X-ray vision, a strained relationship with his father, and has a knack for being the galaxy's most wanted. What's not to like? Though he comes from a different series, Alpha has crossed paths with Judge Dredd while fighting some of the worst threats to plague humanity. But who is Johnny Alpha really? And what makes him one of the most compelling characters in the Judge Dredd universe? Let's dive into it. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. The origins of a perfect misfit. The year was 2150 AD, and the Great Nuclear War took its toll on Britain by wiping out 70% of the population. The fallout from the war also left countless children mutated before birth. One such baby was Johnny Creelman, who was exposed to strontium-90 radiation while still in his mother's womb. His dad, Nelson Bunker Creelman, on the other hand, was an absolute piece of work. He was a politician who hated mutants and made it his life's mission to make their lives miserable. That being said, he was ashamed of having a mutant child and hid Johnny away from the public eye for years. This was done to protect his public image and political career, of course. But how long can you suppress someone's spirit? All those years locked away, Johnny's resentment for both his father and the government he worshipped grew like a forest catching fire. He soon escaped that hellhole and joined the mutant army at just 17. And just like that, Johnny Creelman became Johnny Alpha, one of the leaders in the Mutant Uprising of 2167, aka the First Mutant War. By the end of the war, Johnny was deposed. You see, the mutants were frowned upon, to put it gently. Similar to the anti-Semitic hatred towards the Jews, they were treated as second-class citizens who were still largely confined to ghettos like Milton Keynes. With a grim choice between banishment and death, the members of the mutant army were asked to leave Earth, and hence went on to become intergalactic bounty hunters based on the orbiting space station called the Doghouse. Needless to say, they were nicknamed as the Strontium Dogs, which might be witty but still mean. A search/destroy agency was formed to regulate the work of these bounty hunters, which honestly did give them some legitimacy but little to no protection from discrimination. And bounty hunting wasn't glamorous either, but it kept Johnny alive. He was born into a world that hated him anyway, so popularity wasn't on the cards. Johnny did a good job too, tracking down the worst criminals, hounding them across space and time. You know, the cool stuff. It was plausible how the man worked for justice more than credits. It's what made him one of the best bounty hunters in the agency. The daddy issues really do turn you into a fine man after all. A brotherhood in blood. Johnny's companions over time. Johnny Alpha might have started out as a lone wolf, but over time, he teamed up with a few key allies who had his back through various expeditions. On one such time-traveling mission, Johnny traveled back in time to 793 AD in order to capture the sadistic criminal Max Bubba and his gang. This is where Johnny met Wolf Sternhammer and forged a long-life friendship with him. Wolf was an actual Viking warrior who accidentally got pulled into the future while assisting Johnny in Bubba's capture. After the mission was over, Wolf decided to stay in this timeline instead of returning to his own world, thus becoming Johnny's closest friend and the only non-mutant Strontium dog. Together, they went on multiple missions through the very fabric of time. Then, there was Midden-Face McNulty, who was a hard-drinking Scotsman with a face that looked like a grenade went off near it. But beneath all that roughness was a guy with a heart of gold and fierce loyalty towards Johnny. He was the kind of friend who'd take a beating alongside you just for the sake of it. Then you had Durham Red, and let's just say she wasn't someone you wanted to get on the wrong side of. As a vampire mutant with a serious taste for blood, she had a reputation for being ruthless. Call her Johnny's sidekick or lover, they were briefly involved till he was unable to trust her, and with good reason. Sniffer Martinez was also one of Johnny's earliest partners. Even though he was sharp and had good instincts, he fell short on luck and his time got cut short before he could make a real name for himself. Another member was the Gronk. Now this little guy was a complete opposite from the rest of Johnny's crew. He was small, nervous, and constantly on the verge of a heart attack, but somehow ended up as their medic. Despite his fear of pretty much everything, he stuck with Johnny and Wolf through some serious hell. Not exactly your typical bounty hunting squad, but together they made one hell of a team and tackled some of the wildest jobs out there. Johnny and Wolf were legends. They took part in the infamous Schicklgruber grab. Yep, they actually traveled back in time to snatch Adolf Hitler himself. If that wasn't wild enough, Johnny even got dragged into a dimension straight out of Christian hell in order to get Fly's Eyes Wagner. But the most personal hunt was the one for his own father, Nelson Creelman. We won't get into too much of that, but one thing's for sure, as Johnny's reputation skyrocketed, so did the danger. Guns, grit, and galactic bounties, major roles of Johnny Alpha in comics. Working for the S/D agency, Johnny had access to the finest high-tech weaponry, including time travel devices. Chasing criminals through different eras certainly has to be one of the most thrilling jobs in the universe. One such notable destination was Mega City 1, the dystopia of Judge Dredd's world. Now, Johnny might be a good kid, but he wasn't a saint. Besides, no bounty hunter is above bending a few rules when it comes to chasing their criminals. But bending the laws of physics with time travel is one thing, and bending the laws of Mega City 1 is another. While hunting two criminals who had taken refuge in the city, Johnny and his partner Wolf Sternhammer attracted the attention of the city's Department of Justice, Judge Dredd. Now, that's a tough nut to crack. Dredd didn't care too much for some S/D agent. He only saw Alpha as another rogue operator breaking the law. Cornering the bounty hunters, Dredd attempted to arrest them, but Johnny and Wolf managed to flee. They barely slipped past the law, leaving behind a very angry officer who swore to bring them justice one day. Johnny's darkest hour. After years of hunting, Johnny and Wolf finally made enough credits to take it easy and settled on a distant colony world. But peace didn't last long. Max Bubba was on his revenge hunt and chased them down. Bubba and his gang tied them up under the sun, leaving them to rot. Days passed, nothing changed. They were dehydrated, yet defiant. Wolf still had a Viking warrior left in him. With all his last strength, he broke free and charged at Bubba. He knew he didn't stand a chance, but that wasn't the point. He didn't want to go down like that. As imagined, Bubba gunned him down right in front of his best friend Johnny. He was next, but Alpha wasn't ready to die. Not yet. He slowed his heartbeat and controlled his breathing to trick Bubba into thinking that he was gone. It worked. Once the gang left, neighboring settlers found him, barely clinging to life, and the second Johnny got back on his feet, it was game over for Bubba. One by one, he hunted his crew down with no mercy or hesitation. That was the end of Bubba, but victory certainly came at a cost. Wolf was gone. The only person Johnny had ever truly trusted was dead, and whatever warmth Alpha had left died with him. From that day on, Johnny Alpha wasn't just a bounty hunter, he became a ghost. A cold, deadly ghost with nothing to lose. The Judgment Day. Judgment Day proved to be one of the most significant crossovers between Johnny Alpha and Judge Dredd. It was a time when Earth was overrun by an army of the undead. When you have a habit of making enemies left, right, and center, one of them has to come for you, piercing through space and time. One such enemy was Sabbath, a necromancer from Johnny's future, and boy was he pissed. Angry enough to use his sorcery and travel back in time to the Earth of 2114 with the intention of erasing Johnny's existence. As the world fell to the mercy of zombie hordes, Dredd assembled an elite team of judges to take Sabbath down. Among them was Johnny Alpha. The battle was brutal, and most of their allies fell against Sabbath's powers, but hope wasn't all lost. In the end, Dredd delivered the final blow and decapitated Sabbath. Once the nightmares ended, Johnny and Dredd found themselves in the radioactive wasteland of post-nuclear China, where a particularly iconic moment followed. On their long trek home, Alpha asked Dredd if the journey would be dangerous, considering the territory was renowned for bandits and robbers, to which Dredd simply responded, "Who the hell's gonna mess with us?" Their camaraderie did find its way home after all. Future Threat. By private contract, 200 AD, Prague, number 2000/Judge Dredd, The Restricted Files, number 3. Johnny and Dredd soon crossed paths once again when Johnny traveled back in time to warn him of a possible threat. A company from the future called CalCorp was after Judge Dredd and didn't want to stop at anything other than his head. With Johnny's help, Dredd traveled forward in time to investigate, proving once again that when the stakes were high, even bitter rivals could work together. The death and resurrection of Johnny Alpha. When Nelson Creelman's bastard son Lord Sagan set his mind to exiling all mutants to a hellish netherworld, Johnny wasn't about to just sit there and let it happen. He did what Johnny does best. He fought, he bled, and in the end, he stopped Sagan, but at what cost? He had to pay for it with his eyes, and then ultimately his life. Everyone thought that was the end. Some even say Feral and the Gronk later found his body, tortured by alien necromancers who wanted to harness power from his suffering. Gronk then decided to put him out of his misery, but turns out that wasn't the whole truth. Feral had secretly buried Johnny, covering up what really happened. You really can't trust anyone in the intergalactic world, can you? Years down the line, Midden-Face McNulty and journalist Precious Matson started digging, quite literally, and found Johnny stuck in some limbo between life and death. Desperate to bring him back, they turned to the alien stone wizards, who decided to test just how far Midden-Face was willing to go. He wanted to know if he was really willing to sacrifice himself for Johnny. Talk about friends to die for. Well, he was certainly ready to, but seeing that, the wizards brought Johnny back without any extra bloodshed. The Second Mutant War. Returning to a world still hostile to mutants, Johnny uncovered a government conspiracy to sterilize mutant populations, all orchestrated by Sir Pelham Grenville. When Johnny blew the lid off the conspiracy, all hell broke loose, and thus began the Second Mutant War. He went up against the worst of the worst, be it the Norm Brotherhood, Dad Nabet, and a whole system determined to erase his kind. But something had changed. Johnny was ruthless this time, to the point where Midden-Face had to pull him back from the edge. The resurrection had done something to him, and he knew it. He didn't feel right ever since he was dug back to life. This despair led to one last desperate act, a suicide mission. Johnny walked into a parliament full of anti-mutant leaders and set off a bomb. It should have been the end, but once again, against all odds, he survived. But this survival meant something different this time. He was thrown in a cell for 14 months and force-fed just to keep him alive. In order to be free and get his imprisoned friends out, he had to do one last job. Hunt down the missing despot Jim Jing Jong and stop a nuclear catastrophe. After the mission was done, Johnny didn't stick around for another fight. He set his sights on Fredonia, hoping maybe, just maybe, he could finally find some peace. The deadliest Strontium Dog. Johnny Alpha is more than just a tough bounty hunter. His mutant abilities make him one of the most feared trackers in the galaxy. The most iconic power, though, comes from his glowing white eyes. Those orbs aren't just for show. The alpha rays let him see through solid objects such as walls and hidden enemies, and even read minds. Literally no one can lie to him. He'll know it even before people can even open their mouths. But hey, he's not perfect. Some things can still blind him, like thick rock or heavy smoke. Regardless, his powers don't stop there. Johnny's got a bit of telekinesis as well, at least enough to shift small objects when he's really focused. More impressively, he can send telepathic messages across vast distances when he's unconscious. This one time, he warned Wolf Sternhammer about an ambush while being in a coma. Now that's some next level badassery. Physically, he truly is a beast with peak human strength. Anyone who gets too close definitely regrets it. If you think his powers are limited to land, you might be wrong. Alpha is a top tier swimmer, making him just as deadly in the water, but his most insane survival skill, hands down, has to be playing dead in the face of danger. Johnny can slow his body down to the point where he seems lifeless, which has definitely saved his skin on more than one occasion. Though effective, this technique is extremely dangerous as it requires a precise control and carries the risk of never waking up. A bounty hunter's arsenal. Johnny Alpha is armed with some of the deadliest gadgets in the Strontium Dog universe. Before his resurrection, his arsenal included time bombs that could displace objects in time, stasis grenades that froze enemies in place, and electronucs that delivered a shocking 20,000 volts. If that wasn't enough, he had dimension bombs to send targets to alternate realities and telekinetic shields to block psychic attacks. Talk about an all-rounder. After his resurrection, Johnny's gear became more streamlined but still formidable. His primary weapon remains the Westinghouse variable cartridge blaster, and that thing never runs out of batteries. Alongside, he also carries handcuffs, a permasharp knife, and an electroflare, with other high-tech tools to make sure his bounties stay down. With mutant abilities, top-tier firepower, and sheer grit, Johnny Alpha is the ultimate hunter in a universe where only the toughest survive. Marvelous verdict. From his tragic beginnings as a mutant outcast to becoming one of the most feared and respected Strontium Dogs in the galaxy, Johnny Alpha surely was one of the most compelling legends to ever come out of 2000 AD. Only a true hero can put his life on the line for justice in a universe that never gives a damn about him. But whether he's taking down criminals, crossing paths with Judge Dredd, or defeating death itself, Johnny Alpha shines out as the ultimate survivor. So what do you think of Johnny Alpha? Do you want to see more of his adventures brought to life? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the Judge Dredd universe and beyond. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and stay rad.